justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast, and the audio works this time. I am your co-host, Brian, and joining me as always is your co-host, Spaz.
Hello.
Your co-host, Julie.
Hey there.
And your co-host, Thorsten.
Hello.
Sadly, our co-host, Jacob, couldn't make it today. He's buried under university work, so that's probably one of the best excuses you can give to miss a podcast is, oh no, I've got schoolwork. Can't be mad at him for that. Good luck with your schoolwork, Jacob, if you listen to this. But friends, we have a guest joining us back for, I believe, the third time. We were just talking about this on the show. The developer of the Master of Orion inspired game Remnants of the Precursors, Ray Fowler. Welcome back, Ray.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Once we love to have developers back on once their game hits 1.0, because I love to hear about the journey between like when we first heard about the game and how long it was in development, and then when the developer finally realized it's time to do 1.0. So folks, if you're unaware of what Remnants of the Precursors, well, Ray, do you have an elevator pitch for your game?
Sure. Remnants of the Precursors is a modernization of the 1994 strategy game of the year, Master of Orion, the original one. And basically it's just been updated with improved UI, better graphics, exploits fixed, and it's to make it more accessible to modern gamers. So, and it's free. So the whole idea is just to introduce Master of Orion to a generation of gamers that probably had never played it before.
Was that where the original idea came from, to introduce the original Master of Orion? Because there have been so many, and I know I'm speaking of the choir here, Master of Orion 2 clones. So many that it could be easy to forget that there was a first game. You know what I mean? So is that part of your intent?
Yeah, it's really peculiar, right? Because Master of Orion 1, when it came out, there wasn't even a Civ 2 yet. There was Civ 1 and Master of Orion 1. And there was a period of time where Master of Orion was considered the superior 4X game over the Civ series. And then Master of Orion 2 came out, I remember like in 96 or something.
Yeah, 96,
It was a completely different game. I mean, it was still a space 4X game, but it played completely different. It felt a lot more like Civ. But it just caught on. It got super, super popular. And I think a lot of this too was because Master of Orion was such an established brand at that point. And I think the reason that we see so many Mu 2 clones is because I think a lot of people who played Mu 2 never played Mu 1, because it was, if you played Civ 2, why would you go back and play Civ 1? You assume it's just the same game.
Yeah. So
when Master of Orion 3 came out and crashed and burned and killed the franchise, there was a period of about, I don't know, like 10 or 15 years where the most recent and most modern Master of Orion you could play was Mu 2. So it just developed a huge following kind of by default. And my theory has always been that if Mu 3 had been a success, nobody would even remember Mu 2.
You might be right.
It was just subsumed.
Yeah, you might be right. And it's funny, Master of Orion 2 was the first one I played. I didn't get, I don't know why, but I wasn't into strategy games until like 1996, when freaking everything came out in 96. Like that came out, Here's a Might and Magic 2 came out. I think Warlords 2 Deluxe came out. I bought all those in the same year because suddenly I had an interest in strategy games out of nowhere. And I never even thought, like when you start with a 2, you never think to go back to the 1. You're absolutely right. But the thing is, not a lot of franchises have such a difference between 1 and 2. You know what I mean? That's another thing.
Even.
Yeah. Yeah, like the differences, you're right. The differences between 1 and then 2 and then 2 and then 3 are night and day almost, really. They're just so different.
Right, they're like 3 different Space 4X games, all sharing the same title.
That's exactly right. I've still not played 3, even though people tell me mods make it a legitimate game. I've still not played 3, and
So what happened was anytime like when Mu 2 came out and then later on Mu 3, we were all excited. Or any Space Force games, I kept waiting for the Mu 1 formula, the one that I thought was really so good, to get recreated. But everyone, because Mu 2 was so popular, everyone kept making Mu 2. Mu 2 was like the World of Warcraft of the Space Force genre. Once it came out, everybody had to make a game like it. And so at some point, I turned 50, and I'm like, this game's never going to get made unless I make it. So I just decided to figure out how to make it.
It's funny. Thorsten said in the chat he wasn't, if before he had played Remnants of the Precursor, he wasn't sure that Mu 1 would be better than Mu 2. A lot of people would just say Mu 2 is the better game, and I think after I learned about your game, I went back and played Mu 1 for the first time. I'd never played it, and I think I like the elegance of the formula better than the here, have everything on your plate at once, Mu 2. and I think it makes for a better game. But
well, obviously, I think it's a better game, or I wouldn't have made RTP.
Of course.
But the thing is with Mu 1 is, at that time, like in the early 90s to the late 90s, PC capabilities, memory, graphics, they were just evolving so rapidly during that decade. And so nobody wanted to go back and play Civ 1 or Mu 1 pixel version. Why would you? Just play the newer version that looks nicer. I mean, so I totally understand that.
That's true. Yeah, like I'm just gonna go on a side note here. I don't think there's been any decade like the 90s for gaming. Like you look at games from 1990 versus games from 1999, and so much happened in that decade. There's never been a decade since that has had such growth and innovation, I think.
And I think the 90s for the strategy game genre, I think that really is the golden era. And
it so is.
Not for other games, but for strategy games, because I suspect that like the hardware and video and memory limitations of that era forced strategy game developers to really strip down the game and focus on the strategy. Whereas now, they can use graphics to sell games. Whereas you couldn't do that in the 90s. So if you had a strategy game, it had to be a good strategy game. You play tested it and all that stuff. I
mean, look at the other strategy games we had in the 90s. The Warcraft series, all those great real-time strategy games. Master of Magic. Holy crap, Master of Magic. The Master of Orions, the Heroes of Might and Magics, the Warlords. Just so many good strategy game series. And not even looking at war games. So many good war games as well.
What's the one that Firaxis remade recently? I forgot what that one's called.
XCOM?
Yeah, XCOM. And I had a friend in the 90s who just swore up and down about XCOM and just played it constantly. He loved that game.
They still hold up. I mean, people make open source remakes of those, and they still hold up. A lot of those 90s strategy games hold up because it's not about the graphics. Like, look at all the people still playing Master of Magic and stuff today, because it's been improved and whatnot. Anyway, it's just in a way it's a shame that Mu 1 got so eclipsed by its very different sequel. I mean, I think Mu 2 is not a worse game, but it's a very different game. It's a harder game to play. I think like Mu 1 would be a much better entry for a lot of strategy gamers, honestly.
Yeah, I think Mu 2 is still a great game. I'm not trying to throw shade at Mu 2. It's just different than Mu 1, and I just happen to prefer Mu 1 over Mu 2, but I can totally see that Mu 2 is a great game.
Yeah, agreed. And I think your game especially since it models Mu 1 so well, would be a great first strategy game for a lot of people. I think one way that your game could be a great first strategy game for a lot of people is the manual. You have, thanks to the help of noted game reviewer and all around great person Tom Chick, You have an excellent manual, friends. It's almost worth downloading this game just for the manual. I'm not even kidding. It's such a well-written manual. It is an amazing manual. You know what the manual for this game made me want to do? It made me want to break out the good old Master of Orion strategy guide. That tome of a thing. Have you read that?
The Master of Orion strategy guide? Yeah, that's pretty much the Bible for developing this game.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Because, friends, if you haven't read the Master of Orion strategy guide, you can probably get it on eBay. It's not only a great strategy guide for the game, it is an amazing guide about game design that is just... And you think that, you might think, I'm asleep. No, it is a really engaging book about game design.
Was this one of the primer books, Ryan?
I think so.
Right.
I think so. No, Emmerich?
Alan Emmerich.
Yeah,
Yes.
Emmerich.
Wrote the book. He was also one of the key testers for the original game, and I think he was a designer for Mu 2.
Yeah.
But what I like to say about that book, that strategy guide book, that is the book that launched 1,000 failed Space 4X indie projects.
Oh, really?
Because everyone would read that book and with the detail and the tables and this is how this works and this is how this works and this is how this works, and you go, oh, I can do that, and then people try to write games and then you realize, oh, this is going to take 7 years, and then it doesn't work.
But what I was saying is, friends, if you want to introduce someone to strategy games, this is probably the first one I'd recommend, honestly, because one, the manual is great. It's well written. Did you work like hand in hand with Tom, or did you just like let him do most of his own thing? Or how did writing the manual work?
Well, so basically this project, in a lot of ways has been like an exercise in humility, because when I started it, I'm like, oh, I'm going to just use simple graphics. I'm going to do this. And then when I enlisted Peter Panev to do the artwork, I saw his artwork and I'm like, wow, okay, I got to get a lot of artwork in this game. This is so good. So I'm like, at first I worked closely with Peter on the artwork, but then after a while, Peter understood the game, and I pretty much just let his creative artistic juices flow. And then when I wanted to do writing, I contacted a friend of mine who was a tech writer where I used to work, and I knew he was a good sci-fi writer. And I said, hey, do you want to write for the game? Because I'm a programmer, my writing is going to be pretty dry and boring. And he gave me some sample stuff, and I realized, oh, there's levels to this, and he's about 5 levels above me. So I'm like, okay, you're going to write all the stuff. I have to have a lot of writing. And then like one day, my wife, who's an illustrator, was looking at the game, and she's like, you have the coolest project because you're writing this game. You've got this writer doing stuff. You got this artist doing stuff. But she says, your game looks terrible. It looks ugly. I want to redesign this one screen. And I told her, I said, if you redesign this one screen, you're going to have to do the whole game because I'm not going to have one good looking screen. So she got Paint Shop out, and I made her draw everything in Paint Shop. I said, I want you to draw it in Paint Shop the way you think it should look, but with an homage to their original 90s game. And then I'll try to figure out how to make that work visually in Java. So then by the time we got around to the manual, I'm working around the Tom Chick here, sorry. I was like, I want a manual for this game. And so, like, who should write a manual? And I was like, Tom Chick. Obviously, Tom Chick is awesome. I think Alan Emmerich, I don't know how to get a hold of him. I would have tried Alan Emmerich, too. But, Tom Chick runs a website. He's a well-known reviewer. And I just, like, on a lark, I just emailed him and said, hey, Tom Chick, you don't know me. I'm creating this game. It's a Mu 1, remake. And I knew he liked the Master of Orion. I was pretty sure of that. And then he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, wow, I'm so glad I emailed him. And I just pretty much stayed out of his hair. He set up a Google Doc with some stuff, and I would review it and edit stuff. But I'm not going to tell Tom Chick how to write, and I'm not going to tell Peter how to draw, and I'm not going to tell Caitlin how to design screens. I'm not good at that. So why would I want to mess that up?
That's great delegation. That's really great delegation. Like, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And get
that's what I said. That this project, in a way, has been like an exercise in humility, because every time I try to do something, I'm like, oh, this looks terrible, or this is bad. I actually need to find somebody who can do this. So it's this project has been a litany of me learning everything I'm not good at.
But what I was getting back to is what I was going to say is I think your game is now like the perfect introductory strategy game. Honestly, like for years, if someone wanted to get into strategy games, I might recommend the that Wargamer made Master of Orion that came out a few years ago because it had really good tutorials.
Yeah.
It had really good tutorials. Like I like to call that baby's first 4X. But now I think your game is an even better entry point because one, the design is more elegant than Mu 2. But two, I love how you can just, and not a lot of games let you do this, turn off any other AI and just play alone in the universe. You know, you could totally turn off all the AI and just play by yourself.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And
but you know, don't sell this game short. I mean, because
no, I'm not.
I mean, and what I mean is Moot 1 was like game of the year when it came out, and I mean it's a good game. And there are people who, like, I know one guy. He says, "I discovered your game like 9 months ago, and I haven't played any other game since then." It can be. It's really addictive. It's a turn-based strategy game in the classic sense. It's really addictive.
No,
it's a great design, and No, I understand that, but you're right. It is more streamlined, so it's easier. You don't have like a lot of weird nuances you have to figure out. You get right to the wargaming and strategy part, and it's like I said, it'll suck you in pretty easily.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's based on such an elegant design, but it's got such user friendliness that's what I'm saying. Because you've worked so hard, not only with the manual, but the tooltips, the intro tooltips that pop up once you play a game for the first time and everything, that's what I'm saying. Okay. Like, I think your game could now be like the premier introductory strategy game for people. That's what I'm saying. Like, if someone's like, I want to get into 4X, how do I do it? Play this game. That's what I'm saying. Because it's based on a design that I think has an easier entry point than Master of Orion 2. Plus, you have that excellent manual, you know.
Yeah, as you know, Master of Orion is now the intellectual property of Wargaming. So
yeah,
when they launched Master of Orion Conquer the Stars in 2015, like 4 or 5 months after I started the project, of course, you know, Murphy's Law, I contacted them and said, "Hey, listen, I'm working on this project to modernize the original game. I'm planning on giving it away free, but I don't want to get sued. I mean, I don't want to do anything you feel like is going to infringe on your property. So please let me know if you're okay with me pursuing this project and what I need to do to not get sued." Says, because at some point I'm going to have to spend a lot of money, and I don't want to spend a lot of money and then have to take it down. You know, and that's why we changed the name and so forth. But I've had like an off and on relationship with a contact at Wargaming for the last, several years. In fact, he's even done some of the AI work in the game, and they like the game.
Oh,
I don't know if he speaks for all of Wargaming, but they're very impressed with it, and he has come right out and said, this is basically now the definitive version of the original Master of Orion. That's what the Wargaming guy said. So I would super high praise.
That's amazing. That's great. I mean, I totally agree. There's another Mu clone out there, Proxima something.
Dominus Galaxia.
That's it. Yeah,
I think that project might be dead. I'm not sure.
It's stalled. The guy said he still wants to work. I just looked this up recently because someone was asking me about it, and it's stalled, but they still want to finish it. So it's not quite dead. It's just not.
I hope not. I hope it's not dead. But the last thing I saw was they were talking about potentially refunding the Kickstarter, which to me sounds dead.
Oh, that does sound dead. Oh,
but maybe not. Maybe not. I
don't know. But yeah, no, I think like I could totally recommend this to any new strategy gamer, but also any classic strategy gamer, because you really nailed what made the first game and Space Game 4X's in general so freaking great. But also, and this is the great beauty about the original design, you took out that doesn't have a lot of the crap. Like, I don't have to micromanage every colony. This colony doesn't need a governor. It's like so many strategy games anymore are like, let's put everything in there and that'll make it good, right? No.
Well, there's there's conflicting opinions about how you should do that, right? In Master of Orion 1, and even more so in Remnants and Precursors, the way it deals with as colony management grows, as your empire grows, there's more things to manage. The UI is designed to allow you to do mass management. Like I want to move 15 fleets all with one click, or I want to change the spending on all my colonies with one click. There's ways to manage multiple colonies, and Mu 1 kind of started on that, and then Mu 2 went away from that, and so I think management issues in Mu 2 are a big problem. And then they solved that in Mu 3 with a different approach, was just to have AI governors do everything for you. And that was an approach I wanted to stay as far away from as possible. There's no automation in the game. Everything you do that happens in Remnants and Precursors is because you gave an order to do it.
And there's room in strategy gaming for both. Like there's room for your game where you don't automate anything, but everything's so elegant and at a high enough level that you don't need to. And then you have the opposite where like Distant Worlds where you can automate everything, but they model a lot more, so you can dive right into all this minutia if you want to. So I think there's room for both, but your game, I think is just, I just love the elegance of the design, which I know is Mu 1 inspired, but I just love how elegant the design is. And you've done such a great job. I got to say, you were bringing up the UI. The UI is so good in this game. I love it so much. How you can like multiple manage things so easily. I have to give you props for that because I'm a UI nut, and I'm just a user interface fanatic, and I love your UI. I absolutely love it.
Right. For example, someone was saying, like, I'm playing a game where, I want to shift all of my colonies. I have like a big empire with like 100 colonies, and I want to shift them all to build a certain new design. And it takes forever to do that. And immediately there were two, said, well, there's two ways you can do that. You can go here, do this, or you can go here, do this, and do this. And both of those options take like 5 seconds. I mean, it's very easy to mass manage in the game. And that's one reason why I made the game to be able to support really large galaxy, like 10,000, 50,000 stars if you want. Not because I think that's a playable map, but I wanted to make sure that I could design a UI so that you could manage empires that large if you had to.
It works well at scale.
Yeah, it works really well at scale. It really does. Spaz is absolutely right. Works so well because you got the big buttons down at the bottom where you can go in and you can manage a bunch of things at once. And it's just so elegant. I keep using that word, but elegance is not something.
That's how it works, though. It is elegant, but there's also a counterpoint to how it could be done poorly. And I'll give an example in a similar vein game, which I still love despite all of its flaws. Star Trek: Birth of the Federation.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when you have a whole bunch of colonies, you have a next button to go between them. But if you're managing the queues, you have to manage each individual build queue because you don't really have AI governors to decide what to build. So you have to manage them sometimes multiple times for multiple colonies every single turn. Because you may want one colony doing one thing, you want one colony doing another. And some maps have 40, 50 different planets to manage. So,
yeah, and if I recall, that game doesn't have a overall colonies screen where you can just go in and tweak. Yeah, you have to go to next. Kind of remind me of a war game in that part where you're hitting next unit. It kind of reminded me of a war game like that.
I mean, there are things I love about that game.
Yeah.
The tactical combat is, for its time, is something that I've never seen another game do.
Especially for a 4X.
So can I like go on a mini rant about AI governors? Real quick?
You know what? Go for it, man. We got no structure here. Go ahead.
So then, and this is kind of comes out of the philosophy of not having any automation for the game. So let's say you have a colony, and now this doesn't apply to ROTP, but it does apply to like a lot of Civ games and Mutu games. You have a colony, and you have like a build queue, and you have things you have to build. You know, if there's like an optimal order that you need to build things in, then the game should just do that. A governor shouldn't be required. The game should just do that because it's not a decision. It's the optimal way to do it. If there's not an optimal way to do it, let's say like on this colony, I want to build this thing here first, but on this colony, I want to do it another way because of, who knows, maybe it's close to an enemy empire and I want to build defenses first or something. I don't know. But if there's not like a single optimal way to do that, then what you're going to have is you're going to have an AI governor that's not going to know exactly how you want to do it. So then you're going to either have to be overriding the governor, turning it off to get it the way you want, or you're going to be complaining that the governor is dumb, right? So some of these, my point is if the AI is going to automate stuff, it needs to know how you want to automate it, how you want to play, and that's not so easy to do. And if there's an optimal way to do it, then what's the point of having a governor? The game should just automatically do that for you.
No, I agree. And your game does a really good job of anticipating the upcoming needs. Like, oh, right now we need to build industry. Oh, right now we need to build ships. It does a pretty good job on its own of anticipating, but you can also change it very easily if you need
to. Right. Because what happens is in Mu1 and ROTP, let's say you finish building all your factories and it's done, and it's going to let you know your factories are done. And so this is okay. It's going to make its best guess at what makes the most sense to change spending, because you're going to want to change spending because you don't need to build factories anymore, for example. But every time it does that, it prompts up and says, hey, I finished building factories, and it lets you see, and it prompts you to change it to however you want. So it's not just doing it behind the scenes. It's like an advisor saying, hey, does this look good? And you may say, hey, that's perfectly fine, move on.
Yeah, and it really works well when like, oh yeah, we can't build any more factories. We're going to put all the money here right now. And you're like, you know what? All right, put all the money in research. That makes sense. Sure, that's what I would do. I don't need to build ships right now. But the slider system is such. I'm going to use the word again. I know I keep using it. Elegant. Such an elegant design that I wish more games would copy. Like, I think besides this one, besides Master of Orion, isn't like Sword of the Stars the only other real 4X that uses kind of a slider system? I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't know. I've never played it.
Oh, the first Sword of the Stars.
But most of them don't.
Yeah, the first Sword of the Stars is amazing. There really are very few Space 4Xs like that. I mean, not only does it have a great slider system, like the races are asymmetrical in how they move around the map. Like you have one race that uses jump gates, you have one race that uses wormholes, and it handles all these different traversal methods just fine for multiple races on the same map. And it's oh god, Sword of the Stars is so good. If you have time to play a game, I would recommend try seeking that one out. It's so good. But I wanted to ask you, because I think I asked you this last time, but I wanted to ask about Java, because your game is based on Java. Can you remind me where that choice came from?
Originally when I started this project back in 2003, it was an attempt to learn Java professionally. And I figured if I picked a side project that I wanted to do, which was write a game, then I would stick with it and learn Java. And that did work. I professionally started using Java and became a Java developer, but the game was ugly. And so I restarted the game in 2015, and I started from the original code base. I just had to gut it, restart it all over. But at that time, Java was like, and it might still be the number one programming language in the world. It might be JavaScript now, which is a different thing. And I wanted the game to be open sourced. So I figured if I stuck with Java, then, the largest number possible of people that could look at the code and play with it would it'd be available to them.
Is Java multi-platform? I don't know much about Java, so
Well, Java was one of the original multi-platform games. I mean, the whole concept of write once and run anywhere was Java's motto. So every operating system has what's called a Java virtual machine, and the game runs within a Java virtual machine. So like, there's a JVM for Mac, there's a JVM for Windows, there's a JVM for Linux. And as long as your operating system can support a JVM, it'll run any Java program.
So could this run on Android or iOS?
Unfortunately, no, because iOS is written by Apple and they don't want to support Java. And Android is supported by Google, and they kind of altered Java because they wanted to avoid paying any royalties to Oracle. So they're running like this hybrid version of Java. So it's totally on Google. It'll run on a Windows tablet, but unfortunately, Google, did their best efforts to kind of screw over Java. So
That's kind of a shame. I could totally see this being a great Android phone game. If it,
I don't know, man. It seems like there's a lot of stuff to do on it. It would be hard to fit on a phone.
Phone screens are pretty big now. I think you could totally do it.
I mean, if you have something the size of, say, a Galaxy Note, that would be different. But if it's one of the more, say, compact smartphones, I don't think it would work.
Maybe.
One of the interesting things about Java is because so few games are written in Java that a lot of people criticize my choice of Java early on. Like, you can't write a game in Java. It's going to be slow. Its graphics are going to be terrible or whatever. So for the graphics, I figured, well, this is a turn-based strategy game. I don't have to worry too much about graphics. They're 2D graphics. But the whole slow thing is like professionally, as a Java programmer, I was like a performance guy. I made things run fast. So I just like took that as a challenge. Okay, I'll make it run faster than your game that's not written in Java. How about that? But there is a common theme. Anytime a lot of times, I should say there's like a bias against Java in the sense that like anytime there's a problem with the game or something goes wrong, someone always says, "Oh, is it because of Java? Is it because you're using Java?" And I'm like, "No, it's never Java. It's never Java. It's a bug in my game that I wrote that I could have written in any other language, or it's never Java." Like, for example, the graphics, they're not high performance graphics. It's not because of Java. It's because I'm not using the video card. Now, I could have used a video card. I could have written the game to use people's video cards, but I intentionally wrote it to not require a video card. So all the graphics run on the base CPU. So, it's going to be a little slower than if you actually use someone's video card. But at the same time, I don't have to worry about like video card drivers and compatibilities and things like that.
But it doesn't use a video card at all. Wow.
Nope, just runs on your main CPU.
Huh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Were there any big hurdles you had to overcome by using Java, or was it a pretty smooth process?
I don't know. There's like a few things. Actually, okay, there is one problem. Audio. So the only audio format that's natively supported in Java are WAV files. Now, there's an open audio format called OGG, and I used the library to try to run it, but the library didn't work well. I spent more of my time trying to debug this person's audio library. Oh. So then I switched to MP3, and I started having some weird issues with MP3. So I finally said, screw it. Java supports WAV files by default. I just made everything a big, massive WAV file. So that's probably the biggest problem I've had was audio.
God, audio. And WAV files are pretty big too. That's another problem. With
oh yeah, I never hear the end of it. Like someone will download this, it's a 1 gigabyte game, which is actually pretty small by today's standards.
It's so
and they'll
slow.
Look at it and go, "Oh, it's like 40% WAV files." Well, you're stupid. That's inefficient. I'm like, you don't understand.
Oh no.
That WAV files were the last choice. Because my main primary goal was I wanted to be stable and work, and I think ultimately the end user doesn't care what format the sound files are.
No, as long as it works. And your game, game definitely works. I mean, I didn't have any problems with the sound, and it was pretty speedy. I didn't notice any lag or anything. So you definitely have built something speedy. Do you think you'll continue to code games in Java, or like if you're going to do a next game, will you move on to something else?
No, I'm probably going to, I think release ROTP2, which is like the new version of the game. I'm just going to start with the existing code base and just gut it and go from there. There's no reason to rewrite everything. It's not like I need to move to like a new video graphics platform or anything. But some people think I should, but ROTP worked. It's actually a really good game. It's a much better game than I thought I was capable of making. So why screw with success?
No, agreed. That's an interesting question. Someone in the chat said, "Can you make a no audio version for an even smaller file size?" That's an interesting question.
So, like,
what you could do, Java is the jar file is like a zip file. You can actually open up that jar file with an extractor and remove all of the WAV files if you really wanted to, and there may be a text file you would need to edit or something, but no big deal. But and then turn off the sound and you're fine. I think you could just strip them all out.
Huh, that's pretty cool. It'll run if you just take out the files and maybe change a text file. It'll run without the audio. I mean, it's such a small game. It's only a gig. I mean, yeah,
and most of that is probably like the audio files. I think I put like a thing on my subreddit a while back where I broke down what exactly is a gig, what composes that 1 gigabyte, and it was amazing how much of it was just audio files.
Now, what would you say was? What would you? Okay, how do I phrase this question right? What thing did you want to improve upon most from the original Master of Orion that you brought to Remnants of the Precursors?
Well, obviously, I think I had to fix the UI. The UI was just really dated and hard to use. I mean, if I didn't do that, then ROTP would have just flopped face first into the ground and died. I mean, it was just because it's just too hard to play the original game because of that.
Right. And I have to say the AI is definitely also something excellent in this game. Like I've played it both with the AI set to its most basic level, but then I played one very short game with the AI set to its highest level. I did not last long.
That's another part of the game I outsourced. Like, as I was developing the game, I was working on the AI, and that's the base AI. And the base AI is actually pretty good compared to most real 4X games. It still plays competitively, but there's like a really hardcore contingent of Mu1 players that play RTP now. And of course, they know the game inside and out, so they just destroy the base AI. So they'll tell you the base AI is just terrible and whatever. But new players will still get owned by it pretty good. So there's a guy who wrote the AI for Pandora.
Oh my God! Oh shit!
So he goes by the Reddit user ID Zilmi, and so his AI is called the Zilmi AI. And now he kind of worked. He actually made it really cutthroat early on, but he kind of pared it back a little bit to make it to where, like a lot of the AI would still play like, according to their personality. I think he realized he could play the AIs according to their personality and still have a very competitive AI. And so the AI in ROTP is really good. I mean, I don't even bother playing his AI. I don't want to get destroyed. And none of the AIs cheat, by the way. There's no cheating. It doesn't know. It has to explore the map just like you. It has to build ships just like you. It has to, prioritize and declare war and whatever, exactly like the player. So when you get beat by the AI, you're being beaten on a level playing field.
No, I was going to bring up Pandora because that is one of the honestly best AIs I've ever seen in a 4X game. It's devious. It's great. It's amazing. It kills me every time. And to know that the same guy worked on that explains so much.
Well, I keep interrupting you and I apologize.
No, it's fine.
One of the things I said early on in this project, I felt like Mu 1 was like this diamond in the rough. It's this great game that's kind of been forgotten about. And I consider it, like you keep calling it elegant. I consider the Mu 1 game probably the closest thing to a work of art in the Space Fork genre. I mean, it's so tight and well done or whatever. So I wanted to make sure that anytime I did something to the game in ROTP that I wanted to make it good. I didn't want to sell the game short. I didn't want people to say, "Oh, everything is great except this one thing is you really should have done this." So I worked really hard on each component to try to make sure that it was done well.
Well, and you clearly have. I mean, this is obviously a labor of love, obviously, but like there really isn't anything lacking here. It is a absolutely complete package. You have everything. And another thing I want to talk to you about that this game does really well is espionage. So many games, I'm going to go on a tangent here. So many games either don't do espionage well, barely do it at all, or there are only a few games I think that get it really right. And your game is one of the few I think that gets it really right. Because I think espionage is very important to a game like this. You got to have some good spies, and spycraft takes such a big part of your game that I think it's wonderful. I think you've done a great job with espionage in this game. And so many games forget about that. So many games forget about good espionage. I think there's only a handful that I think do it really well, and yours is one of them.
Yeah, one of the things we added at the end, when Peter was doing work, is for espionage, I wanted to make it feel immersive, even though it's not even really part of the game. But when you complete, like, you destroy missile bases or you incite a rebellion, there's like an animated image of something exploding or people rioting or whatever. And I told Peter, because Peter used to be an architect, the artist. He used to be an architect. And I wanted him to create, for each of the 10 races, an architectural style. So each race has its own architectural style. And when you blow up factories for that race, you get to see what their cities look like as you're blowing them up, which is, to me, is really cool, right? Like, oh, this is what the Klakon city looks like. It looks totally different than the Elkari city, right?
That's great. And it makes a lot of sense, too. It adds a little flavor. It doesn't take much to add just a little bit of flavor, to flesh something out. But yeah,
those are expensive animations, man. It took something.
No, I haven't done much sabotage in my games. I always try to be the nice guy. So most of the spycraft I do is just find other spies, find the 2 counter spy stuff. Don't sabotage these guys, because I want everyone to like me, which doesn't always work. So I really haven't done much sabotage. I always think of how Kim Cattrall said it in Star Trek 6 whenever I think of that word. Sabotage. But yeah, I just wanted to compliment you and your game on some good spycraft, because again, that is not a thing. That is not.
One of the things I had to outsource that you haven't mentioned yet, but it was actually pretty expensive and time consuming, was all the translation work. I had these really high goals of having a lot of translations for the game, and then the writer ended up creating so much text for the game That it was actually a real effort to get these translations up. But currently there are like 19 translations in the game. Actually, it's 18, but I haven't released the next version, which is going to have French in it. So
on the
a few more work.
Yeah, on the itch.io page, it lists all the languages, which is really impressive. A lot of games don't do all these different languages. You've got Bulgarian and Polish and Serbian, 2 different forms of Serbian. And
Serbian, they use there's 2 versions. They have like Latin characters and Cyrillic characters. So he did the translation of both characters. So both sets.
So this game is not just a labor of love from you, but all these people that have helped you. Like help you translate, help you do art, help you do the AI. I guess that's
but they're all paid. They were still all paid. I mean,
well, of course, but still, they wouldn't have wasted their time if it was something they didn't believe in.
I think so. I think a lot of people were really like definitely wanting to make this game in their native language. So yeah.
And I gotta say, where I've seen reception on the internet in forums and on at least our Discord and whatnot, the reception has been really positive. How have you been finding reception of the game now that it's hit 1.0?
I think it's been received actually extremely well, pretty much everywhere. In fact, I've pretty much to the point where I've pretty much stopped doubting the game. At some point, when enough people tell you this is great, when you get enough private emails from people who you don't know and they don't know you, and they just send you an unsolicited email saying like, I'm a Mu 1 player, and oh my god, this game is so. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I get like a lot of emails like that. The only negative feedback I ever got was from some guy on 4chan. So, and then he kind of subreddit for a while.
Well, that's 4chan. I mean, that's to be expected from 4chan. But
it was just one guy on 4chan. Most of 4chan was actually really cool. It was just one guy in particular. Yeah.
The thing is, most people will not go out of their way to write something nice. So the fact that they've done that is amazing, dude. I mean, most people will go out of their way to complain about things. But when they're happy with a thing, you usually get like contented silence. When they're usually happy with a thing. So go ahead.
I honestly think there's just a lot of people who are Mu 1 players like me who have just been waiting for this game forever. And I think if somebody else had made this game and I found it, I think I would be emailing them, thanking them for making this game. Because, I don't think I'm alone in that regard.
No, you're not. As we talked about before, Mu 1 sadly is very underappreciated compared to its successor. And you have made an exceptional Master of Orion. Would you call it? I don't know. Clone doesn't seem the right word. Homage? Would that be a better word?
I just call it a modernization.
Okay. That's a good way. That's a really good way to put it. Because because basically you did take the core tenets of the original amazing game, and you fixed. I think that's another reason it worked. You didn't fix what wasn't broken. Like when people go back and try and remake a thing, that is one of the biggest things you run into is like, this worked. You didn't need to fix this.
Yeah, it's very tempting to do that.
Right. I'm sure it's tempting. Like, oh, I can do this better than, oh God, who's the name of the guy who did Master of Orion 1?
Barcia?
Steve Barcia. Yeah. Like I'm like, you think you can do better than Steve Barcia? Do you know who Steve? So like,
well, Steve Barcia, he obviously made a great game, but part of me suspects he kind of caught lightning in a bottle, right? Because Mu 1 worked great. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But there were changes made in Mu 2 that didn't need to be made, that indicates to me that maybe he didn't understand, or somebody didn't understand why Mu 1 worked so great. And so they broke some things in Mu 2. So part of me suspects that they were very talented and they had a great idea and they did a lot of play testing, right? I think it was Alan Emmerich and Tom Hughes. And so they ended up with this great game, but maybe they didn't really fully comprehend why the formula worked. I mean, these guys are all probably working under deadlines and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Because they made Mu 2, and Mu 2, although it's a great game, it definitely has some flaws that Mu 1 doesn't have.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what happened there. Like Mu 1 was so successful. You make Mu, I mean, you don't want to make the same exact thing over again, but at the same time, you don't want to break what wasn't broken. But Mu 2 was so different. And it makes me wonder what went on there. Like, oh, we have to, like, who told them they had to add all these things? Who told them that, I just wonder how that happened.
The best theory I've heard is that Mu 2 was almost like the sequel to Master of Magic. It has the same economy as Master of Magic. Now, I've never played Master of Magic, so I have to take them at their word. So that could have, and Master of Magic was a very popular game, so maybe they figured that was a good mashup between the two genres.
I think, honestly, I'm gonna say I think Master of Magic is a better game than Master of Orion 2. I think because,
And I would agree with that, by the way.
yeah,
I would agree with that.
I think because with Master of Magic, like, they allowed things to get imbalanced. Like, so many game developers seem to care so much about balance, which is fair. But with Master of Magic, things can get way crazy in terms of balance. And I think that's one of the great things about that game. And I think maybe they tried to rein things in a little bit when they did Master of Orion 2. Because it feels like less of a game than Master of Magic was, which is interesting.
So balance is very, very necessary for multiplayer games. And I'm old enough to remember in the 90s that one of the big pushes for multiplayer and turn-based strategy games, which really are not a good fit for multiplayer, one of the main pushes is because the AIs were so bad. So playing against a human was seen as a solution to fixing the AI. We don't have to work on the AI. We just have to make it multiplayer. But then when you make it multiplayer, you have to make it balanced.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I've gone on record as saying I think solely multiplayer games are lazy. I think it's lazy design because I think making a good AI makes for a much better game with longer legs than making something like I've seen so many solely multiplayer games fail, space games and the like. But games with a good AI, they're the ones that they're still playing in 10 years, in 20 years.
Because they're not dependent on a player base.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than you. So if you can't play with a bunch of other people, if you need 6 players for a game and you only have you, that game is unplayable.
Yeah.
Or at least not viable.
And I see all these games coming out. Oh, 12 versus 12 multiplayer. Are you going to get 12 people? Are you going to get 24 people to play your thing? And they don't, and it fails. And it just
or 30.
Oh, God.
Some games you have a 30 on 30, and if you don't have that, I mean, yeah, you might have 10 people on each side and then bots. Fine, that can work, but it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I prefer single player games over multiplayer games. I mean, a good multiplayer game with people is great, but
it's why I play co-op almost exclusively now.
Yeah.
If I play anything multiplayer, it's co-op.
Exactly, and I do appreciate when a game has good multiplayer and single player, which is rare.
Yeah,
which is really rare. Like Titanfall 2, I think would be one of the rare examples. But anyway, the fact that you have a game with such a good UI and AI, Ray, I think speaks not only to the greatness of this design, but I think modernizing it really showed that one, it can be modernized and it could thrive in a modern environment. Like you don't need multiplayer, you don't need fancy graphics, you just need good gameplay. And I think your game is an excellent example of that.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't want to. I know there's a push by some people on the subreddit to create a multiplayer version.
Oh
but
God, please don't.
that's them. On them. That's why it's open source. It's open source. Go to town, have fun, right? And like ROTP, like version 1.0, the Mu 1 modernization, it's done. It's complete. Stop asking for features. Stop asking for features.
But you did hint on a sequel. You did hint upon a sequel.
There's still some translations in work, and of course, when there's like minor bug, I mean, there are no. I'm not. It's not a false conceit to say there really aren't any major bugs in the game, but when someone comes across a minor bug, we'll fix that too. But otherwise, the game's pretty much done.
But yeah, you have hinted at a sequel, Remnants 2.
Yes. So there will be a sequel, and the plan for the sequel has changed constantly depending on my mood and whatever. As far as like, am I going to do a bunch of small pieces or am I going to do one big piece or whatever? But we're going to have new races, obviously. In fact, Peter is working on a race right now. There's going to be more There's going to be more variety in the planets. There's going to be forms of planet specialization. It's not going to really feel like Mu 1. I mean, you're going to recognize it, and the UI is going to look the same, and you're going to do the same things, but it's going to play differently. I'm not really interested in making a Mu 1.1, so I'm going to actually try to like fix some things that I still feel are structural design problems in the game, with the idea that like I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I might make it worse, but the original game will always be there. And I've got a Patreon. I should say this is kind of a plug. I do have a Patreon set up to where people, if they want to see
how dare you come on my podcast and promote yourself? That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about at all. Come on. How dare you?
I would like to explain, right? The original game was always planned to be free, and it turned out to be a lot more expensive than I expected because the artwork was so good. So I'm like, well, we have to do a lot of artwork, and then the writing was so good, and then Jeff did a lot of really great writing, and I've got a lot of compliments on the writing. And then when you increase the amount of writing, that increases the cost of translations because translations are kind of done on a per word basis. So the game has actually been like really. I'm going to say it's been 5 times more expensive than I expected. So still better than a government project, but still pretty expensive. So what I've done now is if you can download the game for free on itch, and there's a little button if you want to donate, you can donate, but it's completely optional. You don't. There's no adware or anything in the game. There's no free to play type stuff you see. And then I've got a Patreon set up. And it's $5 a month, and you'll get previews and progress on the development of the new version. You're going to get to see screenshots. You're going to get to see design changes. You'll even get to provide input if you want on it. I mean, and so if you like the game, if you like the project, and you feel like supporting it, that every little bit helps, right? Because I still got to pay for artwork. I still got to, all that stuff still costs money, and I kind of lost my shirt making the first version.
Well, you just got a new patron. You just got a new patron, so happy to help. Of course,
I appreciate it. I wasn't asking you.
No, I know you weren't, but you're not. One, your Patreon is not asking for much, and two, I feel like I should really, since I'm employed, I should support the developers I really care about by buying their games. And since there was no game to buy, there was no buy, you weren't selling it. I feel the least I could do is support you on Patreon. But yeah, have you found that even though you offer the game for free, because itch has a thing where you can name a price. Are people using that?
I did name a price. I named $10 as the price. And so most people spend $10 that buy it. I mean, only a small percent of people that download it buy it, which is fine. It's a free game. Some people, I've gotten $100 from some people.
Wow.
And Some people would just give $1, which is fine because otherwise it's free. I'm not complaining. So there's a wide range. Only a couple people have given $100, and most people, it's, I see 20 every once in a while, but it's usually like 10 or maybe 5 or 15.
It's still nice that people are doing that. They don't have to.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the fact that they are is really great. Do you think since this game costs so much, do you have like a better idea of how much a sequel will cost? Do you think you might charge a little bit for that one?
Well, so much of the cost of the game, I'm going to reuse all the art from the original game and plus new art. So it's going to be less.
Okay.
I don't have to redraw all the tech. I don't have to have all the tech images redrawn. I'm not going to make 10 more races. It'll be less, but it'll still be kind of pricey. And I think a big part of the cost was translations. And so I don't think there's going to be some additional translation work as new text is added, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as much as it was before. I figure it's probably going to cost me about $1,500 to $2,000 a month to make this game.
Holy moly. That's not an insignificant amount of money.
Well, game development isn't cheap.
My gosh.
It's not. You can't get, if you look at the artwork in Remnants of Precursors, it's amazing. It's really good artwork.
It is.
And,
it is good artwork.
That doesn't come cheap. You're right. It doesn't come cheap. So, but I probably spent probably over $100,000 to make the game.
Holy moly.
I spent over $100,000 to make the game. So you think about that, and so you can see why I have a Patreon set up for release 2.
And that's friends. Friends listening, anyone who has the sound of my voice, if you know anyone or see anyone who starts getting entitled and starts yelling at game developers, tell them that story and try and make them shut the hell up. Because the amount of blood, sweat, and tears and money that goes into all this is just insane. And I think people need to get I think a lot of gamers need a better perspective on just how much goes into making one game.
Especially if they don't know how the sausage is made, because if you haven't been dev side at all, you don't know.
Yeah, and by the same token, though, being on the inside, so to speak, by making a game and having to pay for all this stuff and the time and effort and the rewrites and all this other stuff and the cost, when I see somebody starting a Kickstarter and they say, I'm going to make this game and I need $5,000 or $10,000, I'm like, either you don't know what you're talking about or you're lying. Because there's no way. And either way, I'm not going to support you, right? So like when Lord of Rigel did their Kickstarter, I don't know if you Lord of Rigel.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And it was for $90,000. And I was like, well, of course you did, because it's $90,000. But I was like looking at that and going, that's an honest Kickstarter. They actually thought you could go on Kickstarter and not lie and say, this is how much it's going to cost. And then a $90,000 Kickstarter for an indie game will never pass unless you are a well-known person. So that's how come all these Kickstarters go for less money, because they want to get something, and then they run out of money, and then it fails because they didn't ask for enough money.
I have seen some, it doesn't happen often, where I have seen some where they're not asking for a lot, but then they say, we've already put such and such into this. We just need a little bit to get over the finish line. That to me seems like a fair assessment. Like, we've put in 70%, we just need the last 30. We just need help with the last 30 because we don't want to mortgage our house, or something like that. That to me makes sense.
Yeah, it's a thing where they've got most of the engine in and the writing's all in. It's just they want money for art assets,
art or sound or voice acting or something. Exactly.
Yeah, and then put more voice acting and stretch goals, that sort of thing. Yeah, I can totally see that, and that seems much more fair than.
But
it seems possible, that's for sure.
Right, exactly. It's more feasible.
It's much more feasible. Those are the kind of Kickstarters I back to when they say, "Oh, we've already put in this much of our own money. We just need a little more to get past the finish line. That makes a lot more sense, than, oh, we're making this whole new game. We need $10,000. Oh, you need a lot more than that. Where are you getting that number from? Sir/madam/they/them. Where are you getting that number from?
Yeah, and then you have like that project, was it More?
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
They were like basically fund our studio, but we've never run a studio before. I'm guessing. We've never run a studio, so they ran out all their money. And at the end, after, I don't know, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in Kickstarter money, because they were one of the earliest indie Spaceworks game Kickstarter, so there was a lot of trust that was misplaced in them. At the end, they said, we can get it done. We just need like $1 million more.
God, I remember that. The Kickstarter has been such a blessing and a curse for gaming. So many great games have come out of it, but like I still lament the crash and burn of Limit Theory. That looked to be such a great game. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it was this big space adventure game thing, like procedural universe. It looked amazing. Even Chris Roberts backed it, for Christ's sake. And he made a good chunk of money on the Kickstarter. And it chugged along for a little while, but then like the pressure got to him and he just fell under this crushing wall of depression and had to stop. And it's just so depressing.
That's another thing too that a lot of people overlook is when you take money to develop a game from people, you've created like an obligation.
Yeah.
And if you didn't estimate properly, if you didn't really have a good handle on your project, and you start falling behind, those people will turn on you and make your life a hell, and because you took their $15 or whatever it is. So that was one thing also I really wanted to avoid. I would just rather have gone to this project just free and clear of that sort of obligation and just try to make my money back at some point later. But you see that happen a lot. I think, was it like John Schaefer without the Gates?
Oh, God. Yeah. That
problem. I think
I don't even know what happened with that.
Apologies if I get this wrong, but I felt like it seemed like he fell into like some sort of like depression or whatever, and he didn't do any work for a long time, and I just felt really terrible for the guy.
I think he had health problems too. I think he had some kind of health problem.
Mercilessly by people.
Oh, I know.
How much is that worth? I don't know. I wouldn't want that on anybody.
And John Schaefer, I've talked to him on forums. He is such a nice guy. He did not deserve the flack he got. Like he had money problems. He had health problems. And it's really a shame because At the Gates looked like it could have been a great game. It really looked like it could have been great, but it was never finished. It was never finished. I don't think it'll ever be finished at this point. Because
on the flip side, there are some where they get a Kickstarter and then the development is really long, but because they're just very slow and steady at the same time, the community still supports them and they don't lose their community at all.
It really depends a lot on setting expectations, good communication. Like look at the Star Sector guy. He's never done Kickstarter, but look at the Star Sector guy. He started charging $15 for his game back in 2011. It's still in early access, but he's very communicative with his community. Does a lot of tweets and dev blogs. His releases are slow, but they're big when they happen. So you feel like a lot of work's been done. And he's got a great community. Do you think, Ray, do you think you had a more positive community experience because you didn't charge for your game?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. People love getting stuff for free, especially if it's quality. And that wasn't the plan. I'm just making this game, and people kind of glommed onto it, especially it started with Moo 1 fans. But without a doubt, it's just been overwhelmingly positive. There's been a few people, but like you said, there's always that certain segment of the gaming community that's very self-entitled. But I think it's a pretty small part. But at some point, what can they do? I could say, okay, well, don't buy my game then. Don't buy. So they don't even have that leverage over you. They can't bomb. They can't, bomb review me on Steam. They can't refuse to buy my game. And so they don't really have a lot of leverage over me.
Spaz, Spaz, you were going to say something, I think? I'm sorry.
I was going to say that if you look at, just going back to the earlier point, if you look at, say, Leafy Games with Pulsar, Lost Colony.
Yes.
Very long development.
Good example.
But they were putting out update after update after update over years. And they didn't lose their community because they were making such progress. Another example would be the Tracy brothers with all the stuff that they do with their games, how frequently they get updates and how detailed their blogs are, their dev blogs are, and the communication they put out. So you can back them with faith that they will get the job done because, well, they're consistent about it.
Another good example is the Deep Rock Galactic folks. Their game was in early access for quite some time, but they're probably one of the best examples of early access working beyond the Treese brothers that I can think of, especially with a paid product.
Yeah. And considering we got in there in the closed beta test before it went live for everybody else, and how many times have we streamed it?
Oh, half a dozen at this point? We love that game.
Yeah.
Love that game.
This is like a little side note, but I thought about it when brought up At the Gates. One thing I always thought would be really cool, because the game I liked before Mu 1 was Civ 1.
Yes.
And I always thought it would be cool to have a game that you started in Civ 1 and it segued into Mu 1, because remember at the end of Civ 1 you could launch a spaceship to Alpha Centauri, right? So I always thought that would be you develop space travel technology at the end of Civ 1. I always thought that would be cool to go from Civ 1 to Mu 1, and so I keep toying with this idea of figuring out how to do like a Civ 1 like front end on ROTP, like like have a Stone Age start where you actually start at the Stone Age and play a Civ game, and then when you're done, then okay, now look, you get the intro and you go into space now.
There are a couple of games that did that with varying degrees of success. One was Predestination, which is when you start with one planet and then you build, you research, and eventually you get space travel, and then it turns into more of a space 4X. That was a good one. A not so good one was Pax Nova. I never like shit talking a game, excuse my language, but that game had the kind of like Civ style game on the planet. Then you research space travel, and all of a sudden you're kind of in a Mu game, but you still have the Civ style planetary management. But it wasn't very good.
You compete with other empires in the Civ style?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, you do. Okay. Yeah, but it just wasn't very engaging.
I actually fired up Civ 1 the other day, and I tell you what, that's not that easy to do, and just started playing it again. I wanted to see if I still liked it. I haven't played it literally in decades, and it was very primitive, but I was like, I started immediately getting sucked into it again. I'm like, this game still kind of has it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to figure out how to recapture some of this too.
That would be awesome. That would be an awesome design, is start from the Stone Age and then move up to, oh God. And then you move up to Master of Orion where you're in space, and then a new colony would be like Alpha Centauri. Oh my God.
And even your military units and stuff could be different based upon which of the 10 races you selected.
Oh,
right?
Man. Oh, this sounds like a great game.
Civ 2 had different units per race. I'm sorry, Spaz, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there is one game that is currently in development. It's in early access right now, the Universim. And it is, although it's not in the same genre specifically because it's real time, it is in that vein where you're building up a civilization on a planet, and then they eventually go out to colonize space.
Yeah, one indication of the success of this project, and I hate to toot my own horn again, but is one thing I get asked not infrequently is like, are you going to do Mu2 next? Are you going to do Alpha Centauri next? Are you going to do Master of Magic next? Like I'm some sort of machine that just creates modernizations of 90 strategy games. But, I was thinking maybe I'll do Civ 1 next. I don't know.
Why not? I mean, everyone, I don't even know what the hell Civ 6 is anymore. Like, what is that even? So it's like, maybe it couldn't hurt to show folks, hey, this is kind of where this started. I mean, that couldn't hurt. Civ 1 is still a great game. I loaded it up a little while ago and had a great time fiddling with it. There is something to be said for simplicity. And there's something to be said for elegance. Your game is a perfect example of this. And I think much could be said for being inspired by the earlier designs like Civ 1, whatnot.
It wouldn't be fair to call it cribbing from the classics, but it is very much benefiting from that experience. If something works, use it.
Yeah, I feel like modern games. I'm sorry.
I just real quick, something in the style of, say, Civ 1, but with Master of Magic style fantasy races might be interesting. This, taking that idea and then putting another spin on it is what I'm thinking.
Well, yeah, I think I would have that, but I would have the Mu 1 races instead of the fantasy races. So there would still be that. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I just think it would be kind of it has to be something that I want to do because so much of this is in my free time, and if I'm doing it just for money, like if this is just a business proposition, I'm not saying I can't not do it for money because these are expensive. But if my primary goal is just to do it for money, then it's no longer fun for me to do, and it's hard for me to get motivated. So I have to be motivated to do it as well.
No, that makes total sense. Fair. I was gonna say we're gonna start wrapping up, but if you have free time, you should check out Master of Magic. It is an excellent game with another excellent strategy guide as well. By the way, one of the greats. But yeah, you can get Master of Magic, I think, on GOG and Steam these days, and I would highly recommend it if you like Civilization, especially. It is. Because a lot of people call it Civ 1 with orcs or whatever, but it really is an excellent game on its own. And you clearly like 4X games, so I definitely think it's one you should play. But friends listening, we should probably, unless anything has anything to add. Does anyone have anything else they want to add, or is it a good time to wrap up?
You're already at an hour 17, so I'll save it for next time.
No. Go ahead. It's fine. Go ahead. What do you got?
Okay. Well, first off, I wanted to congratulate Ray on working with the owner of the IP, because usually we are in the age, and I've been doing, I don't know how long Brian's been doing it. I've been doing it for about 13 years. And things like, for example, we quit including music in any of our shows. We used to do that. And we've reached the age where there are so many different takedowns that if you have 3 notes of somebody else's music, they launch a takedown attack at you. So congratulations on having a great working relationship with the owner of the IP. The other thing is, and Kotaku has talked a lot about this lately, and I won't get into it other than just say the game is developed by Game Freak. And Kotaku has talked about how, and the way I usually put it on the other show is, what's that smell? Spoiled gamers. And you talked a little bit about how people really don't appreciate what it takes to what it takes to develop a game, and there's two thoughts to that. Some people will say in their attacks on other players that, well, one person even said to me, unless you've developed a game, shut up. And I said, well, one of my friends is an executive producer. Would you like me to get him on the line here for you? And so you see people screaming about the artwork in this game, and not your game, the one I'm thinking of. And yet I tell people, I said, I've been playing games back when people saw the first game that wasn't text-based, and it was like, ooh, it's a dot going across the screen. I said, what's that smell? Spoiled gamers. And I said, look at the artwork in this game, and it's really beautiful. And I said, and I'm wondering if you've had a hard time dealing with anybody with that kind of thing. And my last comment, I guess, is now from someone, I understand Brian and Spaz are like 4X aficionados, and my own space game experience is usually, okay, strap me in the cockpit, hand me the flight stick, and I'll pretend I was back when I was in the military. And usually my experience is limited to things like Warhammer, Mechanica, Civilization, Endless Space 2. But professionally, I'm a project manager, and usually people all day long say, okay, you got to be an architect today. Oh, you got to be a lawyer today. And they'll hand me like this 600-page tome. And when I log on to a game and I look at, no matter how beautifully it's crafted, I look at the instruction manual, or I log on and I see like this wall of text. How do you deal with people like me who just say, I just want to get into 4X? But, so I guess those are my two questions.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I think with regards to people, telling me or having to tell people, like, if you've never developed a game, shut up. I mean, I don't ever take that attitude towards anybody, because I often say, like, I'm not a game developer. I mean, I was a software developer, but I'm not really a game developer. Even though people say you made a game, you're a game developer, I see myself as a fellow gamer who can code, and I just decided to make a game I wanted, and I didn't approach it like developers do. I just kind of figured it out on my own. And the second question, what was it? Can you repeat that last part again? The last
thing? There's two things. The first question I had is people who, they forget where all this came from, and Game Freak has come out with their latest project, and people have bitched back and forth about the artwork. And I said, the artwork is just beautiful. And I said, so what is your problem? Play the game. Just enjoy life. No, we want to bitch and complain, to the point where one admin said, look, if you want to start bitching at the game developers, I'm going to start banning people, because I've had enough of it. And have you had to deal with people like that? Even though the artwork in your game is beautiful, someone might forget where we all came from.
Not too much. I think, like I said, the fact that the game is free, and I think a lot of people that are entitled or that complain usually are exercising some form of leverage, like maybe I'm going to give you a bad review, or I'm not going to buy your game unless you put this feature in here. And because it's a free game and I haven't taken any money, that leverage doesn't exist. And so I really haven't had to deal with that too much. There are people who like to troll occasionally and get a rise out of you. And, that's just, I don't think that's a gamer thing. I think that's just an internet thing. And the last thing you asked about the wall of text, you just want to play the game. Unfortunately, the 4X genre doesn't really work like that. 4X games, by their very nature, are empire building games. and they're complicated because you're competing against other empires. So if there's not detailed, then it's not interesting, and so it's kind of complicated, and it's really hard to just fire up a 4X game and just be walked through it because there's so much to learn. But if a game can kind of onboard you a little bit with like little features at a time, that might work. But at some point, you just kind of have to acknowledge you're going to have to get immersed in the game, and hopefully if it's a good game, if it's well designed, then you just kind of get sucked in, and it becomes that one more turn kind of feel. But I don't think it's easy to really make a 4X game that is like super approachable to a casual player without like actually breaking the formula of 4X. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure, because whenever you have a game, if it kind of breaks from the game mechanics that I have come beforehand. You have a lot of players who are old-time players of any particular genre who said, I don't like this, and they try and launch some kind of strike against the game developers, and they said, well, I've been waiting a long time to play this, so you let me know how that works out for you. And yet, on the other hand, there are a lot of people like me who really want to get into this, and so my first entry into strategy games was Endless Space 2. And in some cases, if I know somebody who is the developer, and they'll say, hey, here's a free game, I worked on this. So I wonder then, how concerned are you with getting other people involved in this that aren't real 4X aficionados, or is it just, hey, we all been waiting for this for a long time, and this is my love child to 4X gamers?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like it's the gift of 4X gamers, and if you're not a 4X gamer, it's probably not going to mean much to you, right? And which is fine. I mean, no game can please everybody, but what I tell people, if they're the easiest way to learn a 4X games, if you can, is to play with no opponents. Just play with no opponents. Learn how to build your cities. Learn how to move your units. Expand. Learn how the tech tree works. Get a feel for everything where there's no pressure of the AI coming to beat you and creating a time pressure on you. And then once you kind of get comfortable with the UI and the mechanics and stuff, then at that point, play the AI like on the easier levels first, so that you can. So that's how I would recommend players do it. And I don't know if every game you can turn off the opponents or not.
A lot you can't. That's why I brought this up earlier. A lot you can't.
You absolutely can't in Endless Space 2. You can't in X4 Foundations. But my suggestion is, if you have someone who is as patient as Brian is, and who will say, look, noob, log on and I'll guide you through the game. And then when we're done, do exactly what you just said. Turn off all the other opponents and give it a try. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that I paid good money for Tom Chick to write a manual to the game. And a lot of people have said that, like, I was getting into the game, it was a little complicated, but then when I read the manual, a lot of it made sense. Don't be afraid to read the manual as well.
It's a great manual. I will say this again. It is a fantastic, fantastic manual that is definitely worth downloading the PDF to your phone and reading on your Kindle app. It's just a great, great manual. No question.
The acronym RTFM applies here.
Absolutely. All right, Julie. Did Julie, were your questions all answered?
Well, just one other thing. When I deal with a guest on this show, I always like to go out and try and find a little bit about the person and about their background, and wow, Ray's a hard person to find out about if you don't already know about him.
Well, there's a lot of Ray Fowlers on the internet. It's not
really?
uncommon. Yeah. Like, there's one guy who's like a UFO guy. and there's another guy who's like a Christian preacher, and there's another guy who's like a neurosurgeon or something.
Do you get emails for other Ray Fowlers? Because I get emails for other Brian Rubens.
No, but also I'm I've always been a privacy advocate, so I try not to I don't like having a big social media presence outside of my subreddit generally. So I try outside of the game. In fact, even like on Reddit, like when I have a different Reddit user ID for each subreddit I participate in.
Oh, wow.
Because I don't like my comment history being shared. I don't like the idea that somebody might disagree with me on some Reddit, like some opinion I had, and then they go look at my comment history and then they start trolling, the ROTP subreddit or something like that.
Wow.
Well, I understand that because we've had Richard Bartle on our show a couple times. And when he was asked once about if he could do anything, what would he do? He said, get rid of World of Warcraft. And at the time, WoW had more players than Switzerland had people. And he caught hell about that for years.
Well,
yeah, some people are just like that, right? You get on their bad side, and then they just spend their time trying to troll you. What do you? These people have like, I don't know. They need a life. I don't know how else to put it, right?
Because you go out and find a friend.
Troll strangers on the internet.
If I had a clip of William Shatner saying "Get a life" from that great SNL sketch, I would play it right now, but I do not.
I mean, I go along the lines of, you should probably go out and find a friend.
I always quote Mystery Science Theater. You should think to yourself, it's just a show / game / whatever. I should really just relax.
Relax.
Yeah, exactly. It applies in just about everything. But that seems like a good place to wrap up, unless anyone else has anything they want to jump in with.
Yeah, me.
Oh, okay.
Don't forget me.
We haven't, Thorsten. We haven't forgotten you.
No, I don't exist anymore.
Stop it.
Okay, Ray. I have only the highest. I can only give you the highest praise for your game. It's in the preparation of today. I played it last night. I want to just got another look at it. Want to play it for half an hour and ended up 3 hours later. And I think you reached the one more turn effect pretty good, in my opinion. I really like it. I really like it.
High praise. It's always. I'm sure that's great to hear. It's like, I just wanted to play like for half an hour. 3 hours later, what?
And what I particularly found good was the fact that as an MO1 veteran, I really didn't need the manual at all. I could start right up from scratch, and I could understand the game. And as you mentioned before, the AI, simply great. It smashes me every single time, and I love it. I really love it.
So I hope this is not a politically incorrect presumption, but is English not your first language?
No.
Okay, so does the translation exist for your native language? Have you tried that out?
What do you mean?
Did you play it in German? Did you play?
No, I played it in the English version.
Okay, well, if you ever play it in German and you see any translation issues or whatever, don't hesitate to let me know and I can pass it on to the translator. I always love for people to play the foreign language translations because I get very little input on that.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, the game is definitely available in German, Thorsten. So yeah, it'd be great to try that.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I wanted to play it in the English version because you never know what came up in the translation.
That's fair.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Which is why, at the same time, it's awesome for me when people do play it in translations, and so they can say, "Oh, look, I played it in English, but then later on I tried it in German, and this doesn't look right or whatever," and then I can, we can address those issues.
No, we'll look out for that. Okay.
Great.
I didn't mean to give you a job. Sorry.
No.
No.
Well, friends, the game is Remnants of the Precursors. You can find it, name your own price on itch.io. You can get it for free if you want, but you can also send a couple of bucks Ray's way. There's also a link for the Patreon there, and also the subreddit that Ray has brought up. They're all linked on the itch.io page, which is also linked on the YouTube video here, and will also be linked on the MP3 page on spacegamejunkie.com. But yeah, this game is great. If you have any interest in 4X at all, you should definitely play it. If you're new to 4X, this is a great starting point, as we were talking about earlier, because you can play it without the AI and just learn the mechanics without any competition barking back at you. It also has an excellent manual that is definitely worth a read. So Ray, I want to thank you so much for taking time, an hour and a half out of your day to talk with us about Remnants of the Precursor, and I can't wait to have you back on to talk about the sequel.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody. Everyone was very gracious here, and thanks again, Brian, for the opportunity. I enjoyed the podcast. Absolute
pleasure. Friends, next week on the show, we're going to be welcoming back the developer of HunterNet Starfighter, which is one of my most anticipated games. It recently added VR and Tobii eye tracker support. I bought a Tobii eye tracker just because of the video that Fernando made about the support for the game. So that's going to be next week on the show. And tomorrow on the stream, I have no idea because I played the game I had scheduled for tomorrow today. So who knows? Lost Ark, maybe something. I don't know. But I want to thank you all. We had a very active chat. Thank you all for chatting in the chat. Thank you for listening and watching. And we will see you next time. Have a great one, everyone. Be safe. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.